In League Two, sweet League Two, AFC Wimbledon went to Notts County and they won 1-0 thanks to Riley Harbottle's second half header. Stuart Maynard and the Notts fans are probably still wondering how they didn't score. Their best chances fell to Connor Grant, but Owen Goodman made a couple of great saves. The one in the first half in particular was outstanding. There was a goal line clearance from Josh Neufville. There was a crucial last-ditch tackle from Riley Harbottle as well. And all of those missed opportunities were compounded by Alassana Jatta's red card in the 95th minute. Ali, where do Notts go from here? And don't you dare say plough lane.
I thought they were pretty slow out the traps, and I thought that Wimbledon looked much more confident in the first half an hour. That was basically what I expected, because I felt that the way that Wimbledon play is more repeatable and is a very good stylistic matchup for the way that Notts County play. That's how it looked after half an hour. I was going, yeah, well done, mate. You picked this one correctly. But like, this is the problem with like trying to analyze low-scoring individual matches, is that so many things can be true at the same time, but you just want like one overarching truth. I think this game is an unbelievably good example, right? Wimbledon fans are waking up this morning absolutely buzzing with their team's performance, with the fact that they go back to plough lane with a 1-goal lead. They are praising the players, praising the management and staff. The game plan was good, executed well by the players. But it cannot be argued that if Goodman isn't quite so sensational, or if one of Grant's attempts, or both of them, are executed slightly better, or if Neufville doesn't make that tracking run, they could have conceded 2 or 3 goals. So then, is it an unbelievable performance? Or I genuinely, I don't really know how to get my head around it. And on the flip side, Notts County fans, oh, of course we were going to lose that game. We're poor at home. Wimbledon have had our number all season. 1-0 defeat was always the most obvious outcome. I also think that's kind of true. And I'm not surprised that this was the result. And I'm not surprised that the goal came from a big centre-back scoring a header. A clear advantage that Wimbledon have and have had over Notts in both of the regular season games and all season. But I also think that Notts played some really good stuff. Very clearly created 3 massive chances, if not more. So it's hard to like hugely criticise the team performance. Wimbledon didn't have a ton of amazing chances, did they? So, I mean, it's just, this is the beauty of the playoffs. Like, what happens in both boxes when it comes to finishing, saving, and last-ditch defending is like, it has a larger weighting than the balance of the play and the balance of chances and territory. That's not necessarily going to define the outcome of who wins the playoff semi-finals or the playoff final. But I still think it's worth discussing as a factor in the game because, yeah, like most of these games, I actually think both teams played quite well, but only one team can win ultimately. So really, really interesting, pretty well set up for the second leg. Clearly, you'd be quite surprised if Wimbledon don't progress from here because it's very clear from the 3 games that they do have certain advantages over Notts County. And I think they're very good at defending a lead. And I think that they do so in the right way. And I don't think they'll just spend 90 minutes sitting back and letting pressure onto them. I think they can be quite front-footed in defending their leads. And I think it suits them to do so.
The goal itself was actually quite interesting because it was quite a loopy cross. And for some reason, when you see the ball go that high, you expect the keeper to come and claim it. He had lots of bodies in front of him.
Yeah.
And listen, maybe he couldn't come and claim it, but I think the defenders would expect him to do so. That being said, I think the keeper would expect the defenders to deal with the threat of Riley Harbottle because he was unchallenged. He had a free run at it and ultimately he managed to head it into the back of the net.
Yeah.
Regarding Notts County's chances, it's maybe a little bit harsh on Connor Grant, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I feel as though if maybe they'd fallen to Alassana Jatta or David McGoldrick, maybe it would have been a slightly different story. But I do think we need to give Wimbledon a lot of credit. Obviously, Owen Goodman with the saves and also the last-ditch defending as well was excellent. We also need to mention the red card, talking about decisions again, because Alassana Jatta is clearly pulled back. For me, that should have been a free kick. It wasn't given. He then lunges into a tackle. I think he gets the ball. But ultimately, when you go in like that in 2025, there's only going to be one outcome, isn't there?
Yeah, a tackle or challenge that endangers the safety of an opponent or uses excessive force or brutality must be sanctioned as serious foul play. After that sentence, you're probably still thinking, well, does it apply? The next line is, any player who lunges at an opponent in challenging for the ball from the front, from the side, or from behind using one or both legs with excessive force or endangers the safety of an opponent is guilty of serious foul play. I don't think you can argue that Jata lunges from the front. Doesn't matter if it's from the front, from behind. There is absolutely no mention of whether he gets the ball or doesn't get the ball. It is the action that he makes that is the red card offence. It's really stupid, quite frankly, and I've been really disappointed with Jata over the last few months, not least because I had bet on him to win the League Two Golden Boot. But I guess what I mean is that's probably meant I have had a closer eye on him than maybe other League Two strikers. And the obvious thing to bring up is that lots of reports that a big move in January fell through and Notts kept hold of him and the fans were buzzing about that. But his performances in the second half of the season have not been nearly as good. I think there's been, as I've seen it, some questions about his application and his attitude, because he's been going through a tough spell, and that is tough for strikers. But he doesn't offer a huge amount if he's not getting on the end of lots of chances, and Notts County haven't been providing those for him to the same extent. I think your point about, with the red card, I think it's a very clear red card. I also saw some Wimbledon fans saying, he pushed Neufeld in the face, so he deserved to be sent off. It's worth pointing out he'd already had the red card shown at that point, so that there was nothing to do with the aftermath that played into the red card. I agree that, in an ideal world, the free kick might have been given before he had done that. But I actually think, if you think about how quickly that all happens, he would probably be flying into that tackle even as the referee gives the free kick. So he'd made that decision. His head had gone. It stayed gone for the next minute or so. I don't have any sympathy for him, and I think it was the correct decision. So that was another one where all I'm seeing online is people saying it's a disgrace, and it's not at all how I see it. So it just goes to show how wonderful football ref discourse is. Your point about Conor Grant is very valid. He doesn't inspire confidence in front of goal, does he? I do think the fact that it was him on the end of those chances is quite interesting, because I actually don't think Jata and McGoldrick have a particularly good connection. And I think there was a lot of Notts' attacking play where, with those two being the main players centrally in the final third, obviously you had the threat of Jody Jones, who was trying his best, still playing his way back into sort of sharpness. I didn't feel like Notts had the presence centrally in the final third, or any kind of partnerships that were looking particularly potent. I think Wimbledon were dealing with it quite easily, keeping McGoldrick well away from goal. Obviously, he can come up with something spectacular, but broadly you're okay with that overall if you keep him out wide or 25, 30 yards out. With Jata, he hasn't looked very comfortable with Wimbledon's physical defenders all season. Although he's a big guy and he does score headed goals, he's not someone that wants the ball played into his head, and he's not particularly keen to be a target man from what I can see. So I didn't think that was very impressive. It was only when Grant was breaking forward and being a proper second striker, goal scoring number 10 type, rather than just another ball to feet in the midfield area, just keep recycling, keep moving it out to Jones and see what happens. It was only when he took on that role that things opened up for Notts, because they asked more questions of Wimbledon's back line. So they have to do that in the second leg. And, whether it's Grant playing that role or maybe Whittaker coming back in, who showed a few flashes of being able to do that sort of thing, for me, they need an off-ball player, by which I mean someone who isn't there to get involved and build up and shift the ball out wide and receive and move it and bounce it off him. They've got enough of those already. They need someone making runs in behind. Obviously, with Jata's suspension, there's a lot for Maynard to work out here. They don't have loads of other number nines. Mai Traore is someone that they signed in the summer. Hard to get not to think that they're trying to do the same thing with him as they did with Jata, which is sign someone from Scandinavian leagues to basically spend the first 6 months adapting without too much pressure on them, as happened with Jata and Langstaff last season, before then being the first choice next season, if and when Jata gets sold. Jata's done himself a lot of harm in terms of how much interest he'll have in the summer. And Mai Traore has come off the bench, I think, 14 times, or has made 14 appearances, mostly off the bench. hasn't looked particularly up to speed and hasn't looked like much of a goal threat. So, it's not looking great for Notts on that front. McGoldrick limped off, had an ice pack sort of stuffed down his pants. I think it's a kind of classic Didsey groin injury. He's not built to play 100 minutes of intense playoff football. I suspect he will still start next Saturday, and them having a week off in between games probably helps, but he's obviously not at full strength either. So with Jody Jones looking a bit better on Saturday night than he has done recently, there is still that chance that he does something spectacular. And look, he hit the post from a shot from range. He's got that in him. McGoldrick's got that in him. This tie is absolutely not over. But, Notts County are 90 minutes away from their season ending limply. And I'd like to see them make a few changes, both in terms of tactical approach, personnel, but also just the way that they carry themselves. I'd like to see them give it a good go in front of those travelling fans.
The David McGoldrick discourse is quite interesting because he is probably my favourite player to watch in the entire EFL. If there was a naughty style player cam, I would probably choose to watch David McGoldrick because he just is an absolute joy to watch. He's so classy and he just makes things happen. I do think that at times he is guilty of dropping too deep and almost getting a bit too involved in the build-up play. I'm thinking of sort of Wayne Rooney towards the back end of his career, kind of just dropping too deep, and really you want him in that final third. You want him in those areas where he can make a real impact. As you said, he clearly isn't fully fit. They're going to be without Jatta for the second leg. I'm really interested to see how Stuart Maynard does approach it because they were good in the first leg. They did create lots of chances. They just didn't take them, but he is going to have to shuffle his pack. As for AFC Wimbledon, it does feel like things aren't really kind of clicking for them in the final third at the minute. Obviously, Omar Bagil started the game on the bench. He came on for Matty Stevens. I thought Matty Stevens worked really hard, but his goal threat has dropped off in recent weeks. So, yes, Wimbledon are 1-0 up heading into their home leg, but it still feels like there's more to come from them.
It's very obvious that the Wimbledon attack isn't looking as good or as efficient or as dangerous as it was at large points during the regular season. And so it's hard not to think, well, Bugle's lost his spot. And yes, Bugle doesn't score. I think it's only 4 league goals in our full season. But do you want what he does as a target man? For me, yeah, you do. They do play a lot of direct long passes, and Bugle turns water into wine when it comes to that. Stevens and Brown don't. Stevens is he's actually got a decent. He's a boxer, isn't he? So even though he's short, he's got some physicality, but he's not going to bring it down on his chest and let everyone play off him. Brown, I think, is a really fascinating player where very clearly has talent above the level, but I don't actually think his output reflects that. I think that he rushes his final shot. I don't think he always makes the right decision anyway. He's quite a selfish player, and I don't personally think he's added loads. I don't think he's added loads to Wimbledon's attack. I personally think the way that the second leg should have Bugle starting with Stevens up front. I think having Brown and Kelly off the bench, Kelly is absolutely rapid. Brown, brilliant with a bit more space to play into. For me, it would make more sense to either have Bugle come in for Hippolyte, trust Smith and Reeves to do the central midfield work, and then have Brown drifting all over and just finding the spaces wherever they are on the break, where he is very dangerous because he carries it so well. And then have Stevens and Bugle, who you can't ignore if you're the centre-backs of Notts County because they're so good physically. For me, that would be the obvious way to go. But, they've also flipped Tilly and Neufville, so they're playing inverted. I haven't heard a definitive reason for that. I think it's worked fairly well from a defensive point of view against Grimsby and against Notts County, who have dangerous wide players on each side. And I haven't seen a huge amount from an attacking standpoint that suggests that that's made the team look any better. So, things are being changed to try and make the team look a little bit better going forward. But you're right, they don't look incredible. The beauty of this team is, and this is why I always felt that they were well built for a 46-game season. They obviously just missed out on the top 3. But why I think they're built fairly well for the playoffs is, even without the attack looking particularly sparkling, they've got a very, very sturdy back line. They've got a very, very good goalkeeper. They almost never lose their shape, so they almost never give up well, you have to work very hard to create really good chances against them, put it that way. That's a good combo, and I think as we saw all of that play out here, and they're so, well, at their best, they're so confident at home that I'd be really surprised if we see a poor Wimbledon performance at this point, which means for me, Notts are going to have to, A, perform incredibly well and probably find something spectacular in order to turn it around and take it to extras or win the game in 90 minutes.
There was another away win on Sunday, the 4th away win out of the 6 first legs, as Walsall beat Chesterfield 2-0. A Taylor Allen penalty and an excellent strike from Alfie Chang put the Saddlers 2-0 up at the break, and they managed to maintain that advantage. There was a fair amount of game management in the second half, but Walsall will take a 2-goal lead back to the Bescott Stadium. Ali, there's been a lot of talk about Walsall's struggles in recent months, and understandably so, but it's now back-to-back wins to nil on the road, and after everything that happened last weekend with that 96th minute winner for Bradford, Matt Sadler's side deserve a fair amount of credit, don't they?
Matt, you're only as good as your last game. One of the great football cliches. Walsall have won this game by 2-0 against the informed team, at the informed team, in the league in Chesterfield. And you have to ask, has Matt Sadler solved football here? And are they the best League Two team we've ever seen? I think at this point, those are questions that we have to be asking about Matt Sadler's. I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy for Walsall fans. I credit every single one of them that travelled. I wonder how many people didn't bother because they're so disgusted about what happened in the last couple of months. You have to hope that when it came down to it, they all travelled to support their team, regardless of what they felt. And they were rewarded for doing so because this was a good performance. This was a good win. The players did what they needed to do, and they've beaten a really strong Chesterfield side. I think and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that they deserve the win. The 2-goal cushion is lovely, and they struck while the iron was hot, didn't they? I thought that Simpkin made a really sharp save at 0-0. That shot from, I think it was Colclough, which was a nice move from Chesterfield, the sort of attacking play that I was hoping to see from them. It was a nice move. It was a powerful shot. It was an excellent reflex save from Simpkin. And after that, Chesterfield didn't have any more strong attacks like that where they pierced Walsall centrally with good, punching forward passes into the box and good movement off the ball. They really struggled to break down Walsall's shape. And that's not surprising because it is 3 centre-backs, it is a box midfield, and it's one up top, and it's really, really hard-working wing-backs who are both, at their best anyway, Simway and Gordon, strong defensively 1v1. I'm so pleased for them. I'm so pleased for the EFL playoffs because it's just another example of I don't think there's anything wrong with making predictions. I certainly think if you're going to make predictions like we did, I don't think there's anything wrong with failing to look past picking Chesterfield to make the final when you weigh everything up, all the evidence at hand. But it's just a reminder that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you think before the playoffs. It doesn't really matter what anyone says before the playoffs. The teams have to go and play, and what generally plays out is not what people expect, and that is brilliant because if they all went as we expected, it would be seriously boring.
From a Chesterfield perspective, in the first half they had 71% possession, 1 shot, and it was on target. In the second half, 77% possession, 6 shots, but still only 2 on target. What do they need to do differently in this second leg?
That's a good question. They very clearly need to play differently, and I would suggest make some changes in terms of personnel, the sorts of players they're putting on the pitch in certain areas, in order to do a better job and make a better fist of breaking down this Walsall shape. Because, look, at 0-0, I think, as is so often the case with these games, at 0-0, if that Colclough goal goes in, based on what's happened over the last few months for both sides, there's every chance that Chesterfield grow in confidence, that Walsall have to come out of their shape a little bit, and Chesterfield play through them and enjoy the space afforded to them. But with Walsall going ahead, it was a really bad matchup for Chesterfield because Walsall loved the opposition team having the ball. And I felt that Chesterfield didn't seem as sharp as you'd expect a team heading into the playoffs so confident. Now, that might be partly down to the style of play. They are a possession-based team. They like building from the back. They don't want to get it back to front quickly. And it might also be down to the profile of players. And by that, I mean, a lot of them are pretty old. They're not a quick team. You know, they've got a few wingers with a little bit of pace, but in the middle of the park with Fleck and with Naylor and with Metcalfe, there's not a lot of dynamism. They're good ball players. They're incredibly experienced. Well, Fleck and Naylor anyway. Metcalfe, obviously a youngster on loan. And it's just quite slow. And that's fine at 0-0. And it's a problem at 1-0 down. It's a problem at 2-0 down against a team whose out of possession shape is, one, pack central areas and make sure no one gets through you through the middle, and two, maintain a pretty punchy defensive line and put quite a lot of pressure on the ball at the top of the pitch. You know, I loved that Sadler brought on Adoma and Gordon for Jealous and for Hall, who were the two kind of number 10s at the top of the box midfield. Adoma and Gordon, on paper at least, are more attacking players than those two. They were 2-0 up at the time. And they pressed and they harried, and they meant that instead of Chesterfield getting into Walsall's final third and then playing from there, every time Walsall got the ball at the back, it took them like 15 to 20 seconds to get the ball into Walsall's final third. It adds time on, and when they get there, they get the ball out wide, and Walsall have flooded everyone back, and they've got defensive numbers, and they're comfortable defending crosses. And, you know, frankly, Chesterfield don't have the players in the middle to aim for crosses. Grigg is not going to score many headed goals in a packed box. The wingers don't massively offer like a back post threat. Naylor, we saw, who does offer a goal threat breaking from midfield and almost scored a header in exactly that manner, the kind of Rodoni-esque late run and header. There wasn't nearly enough of that because that's not the way that they play. It's not the way that they score their goals. So the second leg's really tough for Chesterfield because, to me, the best way of approaching it is to actually go away from some of their principles to play probably Bim Peppel up front just as more of a physical focal point. We saw him have a back post header. They don't have a huge amount of other players of that kind of ilk. I guess Dobra will start and they'll just try and get some X factor from him, but he's been out for a while. He looked a bit rusty when he came on. So, you know, they've got a lot to do. I don't really expect them to come back. Clearly, if they score the first goal, things might look a bit better. They obviously need to defend in wide areas better than they did because the first half really is about Mandeville versus Gordon. And, you know, Mandeville is an attacking fullback who spent most of his career playing as a winger. And maybe here we saw that he spent most of his career playing as a winger because slides in and gives away a penalty. I think it was a penalty. I think it's not very smart defending. It's the sign of someone who hasn't spent a lot of time defending inside his box in his career. And the second goal, he's just, again, kind of lazy, kind of loose. Gets absolutely done by Gordon, who's, with respect, not the most scintillating ball carrier. And, you know, Walsall, we should say, and you mentioned it, they manage the game very well. And it's not just in the way that they commit fouls, like tactical fouls, and just slow the game down and disrupt it. And they do waste time as well. And Simkin did what, one of the biggest issues in the EFL at the moment for me is when the goalkeepers are going down and everyone gets a break and they're not injured. And then the game just starts again 3 minutes later. It's really bad. Something needs to be done about it. I don't really know what you can do about it, but something needs to be done. But I think, like, it wasn't just that. I love the way they put pressure on the ball in attack and in midfield at the right times, not going crazy, not losing their shape with it. And also love that in that first half, as they have done consistently all season, in the good times and the bad, when they get the ball out wide, they pack the middle with bodies. And as we said earlier in the Championship episode, it's a bit of a numbers game, that. And in the good times, the numbers fell in their favour. The ball fell to low and he smashed it in. In the bad times, the balls get cleared. When it bounces around the box, you know, it doesn't fall for you, or you slash at your chances. But here they packed the box, and not only do they pack the box, but they have the sitting midfielders. They step forward and they lurk 20 yards out, waiting for anything that gets headed away. And that's where the second goal came from Chang. So just really impressed with the game plan. Not surprised, because it's how Walsall have played all season in the good and bad times. It went for them this time, and they showed that they are a serious prospect despite what's happened over the last few months.
Now, I don't want to get too high on Walsall because it is only half-time and they have only won one home game since the middle of January. That was actually against Chesterfield, but the home record hasn't been great. If they can get through this semi-final and they can win at Wembley, would this be one of the great EFL promotions?
Certainly be one of the maddest. I think you'd zoom out and say it would still be a great promotion because no one had Walsall to finish in the top 3 pre-season. They don't have anywhere near a top 3 budget. I would argue they don't have anywhere near a top 3 squad. They had a manager only going into his second full season. So, yeah, if it happens, once all the noise dies down and you can look at it a bit more calmly, you'll say it's one of the maddest promotions we've ever seen because it would have included one of the greatest drop-offs that we've ever seen. But it would also be incredibly impressive and a good reflection on the squad of players and on the manager if they do manage to do it, because literally everyone has been laughing at them, quite frankly, and the fans have hated every second of it. Many of them wanted Sadler to be sacked. I'd be interested to know what they think tonight, because obviously the club didn't sack him. We've seen managers be sacked before playoff campaigns. It almost never goes well. It almost never ends with someone coming in and the players suddenly looking miraculously better and more motivated overnight. It never happens like that. So credit to the club, because it must have been horrible. The noise must have been really tough to handle. Sadler has maintained incredible composure and temperament throughout. He's not the most interesting interview, is he? But, you know, part of me kind of thinks like it's not the worst thing in the world that the mask hasn't really slipped, even in the tough times. It's been really frustrating, but then you can kind of start to appreciate why someone behaves like that when everyone's losing their head around you and blaming it on you. He's obviously a fan of Rudyard Kipling. But yeah, look, I think just lastly, the one tactical thing that I think is important to mention here is, and I've kind of alluded to it, but when you have Walsall's box midfield, the 2 sitters and the 2 in front, and this is crucial and has been all season, Taylor Allen stepping into midfield and stepping into the final third from the left centre-back role, it just provides a massive conundrum for opponents. And Chesterfield, it felt like they weren't prepared for this at all. Like, it means that at moments in the first half, and if you watch the goals back in the build-up to those goals, it's essentially a 5-man midfield against a 3-man midfield, of which 2 are in their 30s and not the most dynamic. And it's not that surprising that Walsall at times were overwhelming Chesterfield in those areas, and it's not surprised that that's where the battle was won, basically. Yes, the goals came from Gordon versus Mandeville down the left-hand side, but I think it was in the central areas where, I don't know, Chesterfield just kind of walked into a game where they got kind of punched on the nose and got what they deserved, I think.